This is a panel discussion, and we are going to be talking about AI, and we're going to be talking about all aspects of AI. But this panel discussion, this presentation, is a discussion and not an endorsement of any particular AI. I'm sure models will be mentioned as we talk, so we are not saying this is the one you should use, this, that, or the other. We are talking about AI, probably more about generative AI as a whole. Okay, so do not take anything as a recommendation. And as I'm sure we'll talk about, the use of generative AI tools should only be undertaken in accordance with your organization's policies. OUP content should not be put into generative AI model without any permissions. Okay, so that's that. Now, audience, I'm going to rely on you, as I said, so I need you to be commenting. I'll feed your comments in when we can. I need your questions in there. This is a panel discussion on AI, which we call about, I think I'm just looking at what we call it, the past and the present of AI, but the future of AI. It's a very nebulous panel title, and I think we're going to talk about lots of different aspects of that. Apart from being the moderator of ELTOC, I actually teach about AI at the university here, so I teach AI literacy, so I have an interest in AI. I also, as Joe is, I'm a teacher trainer, and I teach teachers about AI. So that's what I'm bringing to this panel. And I am quite a skeptical user of AI. I think it's a useful tool, but I'm very skeptical about it. I'm going to ask the panelists then to introduce themselves very briefly and give their position-ish or something about AI. Joe, you are my first window. So Joe, could you introduce yourself, please?
Thank you, Sean. Hi, everyone. I'm Joe, and as Sean mentioned, I'm a teacher trainer, but also I work as English as a foreign language teacher. I'm doing all kinds of freelance stuff, and I love AI, but my position would be that I believe in a human AI collaboration. So I'm not 100% AI. I believe in this collaborative relationship between humans and AI, and humans can then make their own decisions on how they wish to use AI.
Okay, thank you very much. Peter, would you like to give us your introduction, please?
Sure thing. Yeah. Hi. So I'm Peter. I started my career as a researcher with applied machine learning, and then I spent 15 years in the financial services industry before joining one of the major cloud hosting providers, where I work as an advisor for schools, universities, colleges, publishers, edtechs, exam bodies, this kind of thing, on the use of technology. And more recently, there's been a lot on AI. I think my position on AI would be that there is a lot of potential here for us. There are also risks, and that more than most technology spaces, this requires really close collaboration between technologists and educators. I'm sure we'll spend time on why that is today, but yeah, it's not a space where technologists can work in isolation or educators. So yeah, that would be my position.
I will explore that a little bit deeper in a moment. Neil, welcome. Can we find out a little bit about you, please?
Hi, everyone. Yes, I'm Neil. I work for OUP. I work in the educational solutions team, which encompasses professional development. And I'm basically like Joe and Sean, I'm a teacher trainer. My interest in AI comes from using it every day. So I'm a keen AI user, but also kind of like Sean, I think a skeptical AI user or a critical AI user. And yeah, I'm kind of going to echo what Joe and Peter said. I think there's great potential here for us as teachers to get a lot from AI, but I think we need to go into it with our eyes open, our critical thinking hats on, so that we understand what we're doing and we understand what we get out of it.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So hopefully everybody's got a little bit about you. Let's go into question one then, which is one that we've pre-chosen in the sense that I think it's important that we make it clear what we're talking about. I said Gen AI when I was reading that disclaimer at the beginning. We've all talked about AI here. So Peter, I'll go to you first if I can. Can we define our terms? AI, buzzword. It's something that's going across education as a whole at the moment. But when we talk about AI, are we all talking about it in the same kind of way?
Short answer, no. I think you'll get a lot of different you get some very different opinions here. I would try and break this down by capability, not methodology. That is to say, what is being done, not how it's being done. And I think when we talk about AI, it is about computers solving problems. That's pretty much it. And how they do it is probably not the interesting question. The question is, what problems are they able to solve? So I would be happy defining a game of tic-tac-toe that is programmed in the background purely with conditional statements, meaning sort of if, then, else style statements. I would be completely comfortable talking about that as AI, as well as language models and transformer architectures and so on that are the backbone of what we mean by generative AI. They are both solving problems in a computer, and how they do it, again, I don't think is relevant. So I don't think we should be drawn into saying that neural networks are AI, but conditional statements aren't, because we may find other methods of solving these problems. And really what we're talking about is computers solving problems.
So computer solving problems is a nice short answer for that. You mentioned language models there, which again students might, the audience might not fully understand. But AI is based on a language model. Is that what we're saying?
So there is a huge gamut of AI. There's a history here where in the 50s, the idea of a neural network came about. And this is a way of, you can imagine it like a matrix with nodes that connect to each other and have weights between them. And there's a way of training a neural network based on data to accomplish something. And early on, we'd have done things like classifiers. Now, when I talk about a classifier, that's an idea of you might have some pictures, and some of them might be of cats, and some of them might not be of cats. And you could train a neural network as a classifier to say this is a cat, or this is not a cat, and so on. And there's been an evolution of these kind of these architectures. When we talk about language models are just another evolution of a neural network architecture and training paradigm that allows them to predict the next word in a sentence relatively accurately.
Thank you very much, Joe. So education is the problem which AI can solve, according to that computers solve problems. So is that how you see your definition of AI?
Ooh, that's a very, very good question, Sean. To be honest, like I always think about this, like if at the beginning, a lot of people were saying on social media that AI is going to revolutionize education. And I don't fully agree with that. However, it could revolutionize or actually solve problems that had already been in education. So for example, our views on assessment, or how we treat learning, what we consider knowledge and what we consider learning in general, what about motivation to learn. So in these aspects, I think it could solve some problems, because it highlights the issue or certain issues that have been in education for a long time, but we just didn't want to see those problems. But AI can help us make see these issues that, for example, what's the point of education? What's the point of learning? What's the point of homework? And what's the point of testing? I love that.
Has the question always been, what's the point of homework, though, really, before AI or after AI? Neil, what's your thoughts? I mean, the question started in a terminology basis, and we've moved a little bit into problem solving with it now. Do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm very qualified to give a technical definition of AI, but I think from a teacher's perspective or a teacher trainer perspective, we could define AI as a tool, right? It's a tool that we can now use in our classes, can use with our students. It's a tool that we could maybe get to do some of the things that we did before, and it's a tool that maybe can do some new things that we hadn't ever thought of. But unlike, maybe some, chalk and Blackboard, which is maybe a very neutral tool, I think AI is maybe a less neutral tool. And if we're going to use this tool, I think we need to be aware of all the implications that come with using it. So I don't have much more to add really than.
Yeah, once Peter gives a technical definition, we're good, aren't we? With that, I can see there's already some thoughts coming in about AI and how it might damage critical thinking. People are talking about AI and testing and whether grades are still valid because of AI. I'll come to this. I'm just having a look at the chat box in a moment. AI can work. I mean, Akbar's comment, AI can work as a consultant for self-regulated learners, I think is an interesting comment. Zahar says AI in education can help or harm, but it depends on how it's used. Balance is the key. I think that's quite interesting. A lot of people are asking about what are the drawbacks with that at the moment. Some people are saying it's a great tool, which I think we've been put forward to. And Ume says it's vital, but only if they make more free versions. Fair enough. With it. So I think that gives us a good idea of where the audience is coming with it. And of course, if you want to put your comments in, if you use AI or don't use AI, put them in the box. I'll try and read them in. If you can see my head bobbing around, by the way, it's because I'm looking at all the comments coming in on different screens. It's not that I'm not paying attention to the speakers. So we had that comment about balance. We had that comment about worried about grades. I think actually, therefore, the next question probably needs to be about how we deal with it. So I guess how can teachers and perhaps stakeholders, policy makers, be expected to adjust for AI, especially given it is evolving so quickly with it? Who wants to go first? Anybody want to go first? Neil, you raised your eyes, so there you go.
Yeah, I raised my eyes. I think the quick answer I could give is that maybe they can't be expected to, because it is moving so fast, right? Maybe the question is, to what extent can they be expected to? And I think we had like a cautionary tale with social media, right? About that came out and it seemed just like this very neutral kind of thing, just this kind of friendly tool for sharing photos and stories. And then look at us now, 15, 20 years later, we're seeing this kind of like the profound effects that this kind of seemingly benign technology has had. So can they be expected to? It's really tough to, right? There's new things coming out every day. Is it important that we do our best to maybe understand it and learn the lesson of social media? Then I think yes. So, I guess it's up to every teacher to decide how much they want to keep up with it. And if you're going to engage with it a lot and you're going to make it an integral part of your teaching, then I think probably you do have a responsibility to try and keep up with what's happening with it.
Joe's in there. I see Peter was about to come in and Joe got her hand up first. So Joe, then Peter coming straight after. Yeah, Joe.
I just wanted to comment on that one particular sentence, Neil. You said that I already forgot what you said. Every teacher should make, I think, their own decisions. I think it's just a difficult thing to. So I've seen that basically in schools that every teacher kind of thinks in this way, that every teacher is going to do their own thing and they have their own relationship with AI. But I can also see this higher level interest as well, that the board or policymakers would like to somehow control how teachers relate to AI, and that they would like to prevent that teachers just have their own personal views and their own individual ways. But I also agree that it's very hard to come up with one policy. So maybe some kind of a framework could be fine that can be always adjusted, but to some extent teachers should be brought up to speed. So like they should have sort of a similar view on how AI should be used in school.
Very good. I agree. I think it's worth differentiating between in and outside of the classroom, because we have a lot of control on what comes into the classroom, or at least we should have some control of what comes into the classroom, and almost no control of what gets done outside of the classroom. So talking inside of the classroom, I would totally agree with Neil that there are cautionary tales here, which sort of raise social media, and I think that's a good one. There is probably less sensitive ones like the music industry, where the use of algorithms and computing in the music industry with streaming music means that the way that music becomes popular now has completely changed because of the use of algorithms in that space. And that's kind of an unintended consequence of streaming platforms and recommendation services. When we come to education, this is a big topic and we care about it a lot. And so we need to be careful with its use. But that's kind of in the classroom and we have a lot of control. The bit that I think is probably more challenging for teachers is the outside of the classroom use, where that has a risk of moving more quickly and being adopted more quickly, and puts more of a strain on teachers being able to respond to that.
Okay, everybody happy with that answer? Not just Peter, I mean, whether anybody wants to come back with it. There's a load of stuff coming about the critical thinking aspect. We will get to that one, and the decline and of critical thinking, the decline of being able to think totally. Number of questions coming in about how about the testing, etc. We'll get to it. Can we trust AI, folks? If teachers, can we trust it? I mean, these questions, these comments that are coming in show that teachers have a level of skepticism. I said I was skeptical at the beginning, which I think for me is where I should be with it. But can we trust AI?
Can I just
go on?
I was just thinking, like, can I trust anyone? Like, can I trust my neighbor? Can I trust anyone promising to me that they will say the truth? I think the problem here is that we tend to think like, oh, this is technology. Technology is something big, something important. I should trust it. I found it on the internet. It must be true. Or this AI chatbot said it to me, like it must be true. I think it's about like our critical thinking. And to be honest, I also wanted to comment on that. Like it's been in danger for a while now, and we don't really need AI for that. We just need to think critically in general, and to think about where information is coming from, who should we trust, and what we base this trust on.
Fine,
so
thank you.
In short, yes, if we critically think about it. Sorry, Neil.
I was just going to say, Philip W. just said that in the chat, he said, can we trust the internet? With a laughy face, which is quite funny, yes. I would say, let's define what we mean by trust. And going back to Peter's kind of example of the musical choice algorithm, you know, we can probably trust the algorithm to, you know, reliably choose a song for us to listen to next that we probably quite like. You know, probably can do that. But then can we trust it to, you know, direct the future of the music industry? Or should we want to trust it to direct the future of the music industry? So I guess it means, you know, we should understand what we mean by trust, I think, in that question. So again, a fudge answer.
I like the way you throw it back to me. It's like my fault for saying, what do you mean by the question? I like that. Peter, sorry.
I'm going to get down more of a technical route in the sense that, to really concretely, if we pick a specific AI that's been trained to do something, right? There are two things here. There's what has it been trained to do, and what data was used to train it. Those are going to be the two critical things here that are going to impact our trust. So that what has it been trained to do? It's very hard to give an AI instructions that are aligned to what we really want. If we think about what language models are doing, which we'll talk about a lot today, they are predicting the next word. That is what they are trained to do. They are not trained to teach children. I'm not even sure what that means as a sort of set of concrete instructions that you could give a computer. So we talk in training about things like reward functions. And effectively what we're doing there is we are saying to a model when we're training it, if you do this, this is good. So what is the thing we are training it to do? That's quite hard to align to some nebulous idea like teaching children. You end up with very concrete things that you train a model on. The second thing is about the data that's used to train it. Models will perform very well while they're dealing with data that is similar to the data they're trained on. That's quite hard to achieve in the real world too, because the real world is big and has a lot of variance in it. So yes, I would trust AI to do what we've trained it to do with similar data sets, but what we've trained it to do is quite hard to align to what we want, and keeping the data set that it's trained on similar to the data set that it's using in the real world can be quite challenging as well. And that's where I think we see AI behaving in ways that we might not want.
Thank you. Yeah, the people are talking about their hallucinations now, that they could just can't trust the information there. And I think feeding what Peter said, I'd like to, when I'm using it with students, one of the things I do is get them to ask the same question several times to the AI. And you'll see how many times the answer is different, because as Peter said, it's kind of predicting what the words are, and those word predictions change. So you ask the question 5 times, you may get 5 different answers from the model on a very basic prompt before Peter tells me that I'm not prompting it correctly. So yes, the hallucinations. Defender said his answer was, their answer. I don't know. I feel that AI can be trusted under close supervision. If I see AI generating crap in the middle of long answers, which I think is very very neatly put. I'm going to ask one more question from my set before I go open, because I want to ask the question about. There's a number of people in the chat box are commenting that AI is now part of lessons. AI has to be part of education, of the class, of this and the other. My thought on when I read that is, does it? And so my question is, do teachers and students, or even parents, should they be allowed to opt out from using AI? There is an assumption that we have to use it, but because we've sort of got into that area already of data and ethics and whatever. Should they be allowed to use it? Should they can opt out from using it?
So I'm going to give a non-answer. I'm going to say that essentially that's a libertarian versus authoritarian question. There is a public good that comes out of the use of AI, and there's a freedom involved in choice here, and the implication of that freedom is, if AI becomes a core part of our teaching, and we want to maintain the freedom of choice not to use it, it has implications for the educators. They need to make bespoke things and teach in other ways for students who don't want to do that. Now where you fall on that is totally down to you, but that's the trade-off. It comes at the cost of effort for educators to maintain a personal freedom of choice there. And we make these trade-offs all the time. We use textbooks. You have to use the textbook. You don't get a choice. We have computers used for homework. You have to use them. You don't really get a choice in that. This is another one of those. Now, how far we want to take that, I'm not qualified to comment, but that's the trade-off. It's effort versus freedom.
I think it goes back a little bit to the earlier question you had about, can teachers be expected to stay up to date? And I think if teachers can, be very transparent about their AI use and explain to parents what they're using it for, and it's how it's being used, I don't think then parents would have a case to make to say, well, I don't want you using that. If teachers can't, adequately describe to parents or students what they're doing and why they're doing it, then maybe, I would be sympathetic to students and parents who say, well, I'm not interested in that being in my lessons. I think also in practical terms, can they opt out? It's probably impossible, because I guess AI is just involved in all these processes, at higher levels that we won't even know about. So to some extent, AI is influencing their classes, whether they like it or not.
Yeah, I think you're right there, Neil, as well. I think teachers actually, I asked the question just because I could, but the teachers probably don't realize how much they're already involved in AI because of the other things they use. I've take AI aside, I've always draw teachers use something like Kahoot, for example, and the data that's collected by Kahoot, which you wouldn't necessarily see as an AI tool, although it now has AI in it. But that idea of the sharing of the data and what it's being collected and everything, and what's happening in that, it's been happening for a while anyway. So again, I think it's that knowledge. It goes back to that idea of understanding what you're using, and that word again, critical thinking. Are you ready for some, or perhaps more quick fire questions? So Malia asks, does AI lessen the credibility of teachers because the AI has the knowledge?
I think we're all going to say no. And just some thoughts on that in the sense of, to Neil's point about AI being a tool, certainly for the moment, I think that's true. AI is a tool for us, and I don't think calculators make mathematicians less of. I don't think cars are tools. We use them to get around. It's still me who's in control of that. So I think if we think of AI as a tool, no, I don't think it does. I think we sort of talked about having humans in the loop, as in humans evaluating what's going on here. I think that's obviously still going to be important. We've mentioned sort of the critical thinking skills, and I think that's probably true of educators too, that we want to think about how much we hand over to the tool and what skills we want to maintain and what skills we want to review. But fundamentally, I'd see these as tools, not as replacement.
Yeah. Can I say to that I read yesterday that I think it's OpenAI. They were saying that they had a new model that was really good at creative writing, they're saying, and that they were really impressed with it. And I was like, that just leaves me really cold. You know, I have absolutely no interest in reading creative writing done by AI. I'm sure it could write a really good story, but I've no interest in reading it. Equally, that I think AI could create a really good painting, but I don't value it as art, you know. So for me, because the interest in literature and art comes from the backstory of the artist and the writer, and understanding how their human story has influenced what they're writing, or the artist, how they've shown their human side in the painting. That's the interest. And I think there's an analogy there with teachers. You know, the teachers bring so much of their humanity to the class and their wisdom and their life stories that I just don't think AI could ever hope to replace that. And I'm not interested in it, even if it wants to, you know. I
see Joe, but I just want to interject slightly. So, but surely writers, Neil, using your analogy, surely writers and artists are influenced by other writers and artists. Isn't that the same in the sense of ChatGPT or generative AI?
How does it work, Peter? Is it?
I want to hear what Joe thinks in a second, but the long and the short is, I think something really interesting that's happened. You will remember maybe 2 or 3 years ago, when language models kicked off a lot, they were seen as incredible because they could write very mediocre poems, and very mediocre haiku and so on was the common use case. And at the time, they were very poor at mathematics and very poor at coding. What we've seen in the last sort of few years, and I want to be very careful about drawing this line forward and making predictions. I think that's a good way of looking very silly. But over the last few years, we've seen massive improvements in coding and mathematics. And the reason we've seen massive improvements in coding and mathematics is because they are concrete problems. You are right, you are wrong. You have code that compiles, you have code that doesn't compile, you have code that passes its unit tests, you have code that doesn't pass its unit tests. So you can train the model, going back to this idea of what are you training it to do, you can train the model to generate accurate mathematical reasoning and accurate code because you've got really clear objectives. How do you train a model to write Shakespeare? What is good Shakespeare? I'm not going to ask people to write down the full concrete list of what makes good Shakespeare, right? That's very hard to do, and therefore it's very hard to train. So I think we have seen less improvement in that kind of creative writing thing. It still writes sort of acceptable, middle of the road stuff, because it's very hard to define what makes brilliant writing brilliant. That's true of educating too, and sort of pulling that thread forward. When I've worked with educators, what makes a good exam question? What makes good feedback to a student about their answers? It's really hard to say these are the 10 concrete rules of what makes good feedback, and therefore it's really hard to train models and instruct models to create that. It's a very subtle thing.
Yeah. Sorry, can I just add one more thing?
Sorry. The floor is your show.
Thank you. I'll take it. So just like as Neil was saying, that you wouldn't value these AI generated stories and artwork, I think it's because we choose to value human creativity, but I think it's also there's a business aspect to it, that if I can get it cheaper and I don't really want to value human creativity, I'm just going to get the cheap artwork, the cheap music, and cheap stories. And if I'm happy with that, then it's going to affect those who spend hours of like putting their blood, sweat, and tears into creating those creative forms. So I'm kind of I see there's going to be some kind of like 2 layers here, that those people who are happy with mediocre quality, they will pay much less for that kind of AI generated thing. And those who value human creativity and the backstory and what went into it, they will continue to buy like human created or human generated work. I just wanted to say that.
I mean, I was just being devil's advocate. I find it quite interesting, as people have commented on my board games in the back. In board gaming, there's a real backlash against anybody using AI in the board games. Through that human creativity point of view, that they want the artist, they want the artwork in the game being a human thing. So I think they're absolutely right. But I just wanted to be slightly devil's advocate. I'm going to go to a question from Mark, because I think that's interesting. So Mark R asked, we keep asking what AI can do for education, but do we ask what education can do for AI? So how can teachers encode educational values into AI or into the way that they're used?
I guess they can train the data set or somehow affect training by inputting data and methods, I'm guessing, but otherwise,
I can throw something in here. I think educators improving AI is absolutely key. So I can give some stories here. So I've worked with exam bodies where essentially the task was, can we generate exam questions from textbooks? And the answer is yes, we can get the models to read a textbook and create an exam question. And I've done it. And then I would show it to educators and I would say, here. And they would say, that is rubbish.
Yeah.
And it's rubbish because here are all the problems with the question you've generated, or here, great. And so technologists working on our own to use AI in the education space end up with quite, to your point, quite poor quality educational materials. Educators understand what they're trying to achieve in really subtle, detailed ways. And so how can educators improve AI? Work with technologists to make sure the output is of the highest quality possible. Because, again, to your point, there is an economic drive here. And there's a sort of dystopian future, which I think you sort of pointed out, of sort of really low quality, mediocre but cheap materials being available. I don't think that's what any of us want. We want the highest quality education to be available. And the only way we get there is to partner with educators, like I'm sure everybody on this webinar, to evaluate those materials and improve them. And it really is not a trivial task to do.
Anything to add, Neil?
Well, kind of going back to what Joe said before, I mean, I read a very interesting line in a blog post that, well, I really liked it. Unfortunately, I can't remember the blog, so apologies, but it said something like, teachers won't be replaced by machines, but they may be replaced by the people who've invested in those machines, in trying to save some money. So I think what can education do for AI? I guess is hold the ground, make sure that we value what we do and that we understand what we do. And, make sure that we don't let AI encroach into it. If AI can't replace us, or do what we do, let's value what we bring into the table and let's not abdicate to AI those roles, I think.
Fair enough. Thank you. A number of people commenting on that and what we said about the writing with it. I agree with Rashimi's point about it's not something that happens all the time in terms of brilliance in writing and art. That's something that comes out with it. So thank you for that, Rashimi. A lot of people, just to flag up that people are asking about how can we apply AI to education. In the panel, we're taking a bit of a wider look. Immediately after the panel, Jo is going to stay on and she's going to talk more practically about how we put it in there. We felt it was important to tackle some of the issues surrounding AI in this, rather than just like you can use it to do this, that, and the other. So they are coming with it. So talking about issues, we have had this. Well, we can't give homework for AI because people will do it. It's impossible to see the difference these days between a piece of work written by AI, a student piece of work. This is between AI and the student themselves, which I think leads into that question of plagiarism, of where things come from, who owns the work, where's the work being done from. There are a million different questions coming in about how can we stop plagiarism, what's the value of plagiarism, do we need to change things? People's thoughts on plagiarism and those kind of ideas and how it might be. I'll leave it open so there's no questions, so you can just comment and pick up a lot of those points from it. Jo, do you want to come in on plagiarism?
Yes, absolutely. Because I wanted to just grab this question because I I just wrote a book and it's going to come out soon. And we specifically wanted to use AI in the book, like use AI in generating some ideas, the worksheets, some ideas for the worksheets, and we included a section on how we used AI. And that was a kind of a difficult thing to push through because it's publishing, and then publishing houses are obviously they don't really know what to do at this moment because no one has really done anything like that before. So there's no real consensus what's good and what's not good, what's plagiarism, what's not plagiarism. However, I believe that so it's a very difficult question, but I think if we use it like for idea generation, and I credit the source that this was my question, and I got these ideas, and from those ideas I generated something, or like not generated, I wrote something that's my work, but I got ideas from somewhere else. I don't think that counts as plagiarism. But that's such a difficult question because it really depends on how you define the legal terminology and what is actually plagiarism. My personal view would be that as long as I credit the source and it's just ideas and not the entire thing. But then also, for example, in teaching, when we generate sample sentences, does it really matter who generated? Like, Peter likes chocolate. Sorry, Peter. But like, anything like that. What? There you go. But does it matter whether I wrote this sample sentence or AI wrote this sample sentence? Honestly, I don't really care. And that's why I think that we need to somehow look at this AI human co-generated material differently than just simply, is it plagiarism or not?
There you go. So redefine the term plagiarism so that we can use AI. That's what Joe is basically saying.
Can I say something here? Like, I mean, I think you're saying, does it matter? I mean, sometimes it does matter, right? But I would say so. In the Oxford Teachers Academy courses that we do, they're online courses, and there's a lot of forum posts and assignments that people have to do. And it was remarkable how quickly we saw, like, obviously AI generated forum posts coming in, and it was just crazy. It was like within days, you know, and we kind of struggled. How do we deal with this? You know, first of all, we started with AI detectors, and you can't really trust AI detectors. And at the end of the day, we had to come up with the thought that, well, people are just going to use AI and there's nothing we can do about it, right? And
the forum post is not the
one tutor came on and he said, and what he's doing now is at the start, he's saying, look, we're all going to use AI. I'm using AI. Look, here's how I use AI. I've used it to give me a synopsis of all your forum posts, but now I'm going to use my own ideas. And so I think sometimes it does matter. You know, we do want people sometimes to express their own thoughts and ideas about it, but let's not be too puritanical about it. And let's say, okay, we know you're going to use it, but here's some good use. Here's how you can use it well. And maybe here's where we would prefer you not to use it.
Thank you, Neil. Peter, sorry.
Yeah, I think that's really good. I think there are a couple of implications from what you just said. If we imagine we have an assignment for students of write an essay on whatever subject, if we accept that some students are going to use AI to generate their essays, that has implications for what our evaluation is. Is it, what's the quality of the output essay? Well, maybe not anymore, because the output essay is potentially coming from AI in some cases. What do we actually care about? We probably care about why they've made the certain points in the essay and their understanding of those points and the alternatives. We probably care about if it's the quality of writing, why they've made decisions about what words where, what sentence structures. So in a perfect world, you'd run a Viva for every student and you'd ask them, okay, talk to us about your essay in person. The fun thing is that AI can help you do that. So I created a system for an institution and showed taking a published essay on a topic and submitted it as if it was my own work, and then had the system ask me questions about it, saying, you've made the following points. Why this? Why not this other point here? Why not cite this other source? Why have you structured like this? Could you have done something else? And then evaluate the quality of my answers against the essay I'd written. So I think, to your point, Neil, I think absolutely we can expect students to do this. I think that has implications for how we evaluate and what we're trying to evaluate. But I don't think it's all doom and gloom. I think there are things we could choose to evaluate and ways of scaling that actually still meet learning objectives, even with students potentially creating the outcomes in other ways.
Thank
Can
you.
I just jump in
Yeah,
there
Joe.
very quick? Just about this process versus product approach, because this is, Peter was basically saying this, that we, instead of focusing on the product and what they submit as their product, we can then increase the emphasis put on the process of writing and why you did that, why you chose that, what was your objective, what was your idea behind it. So instead, we increase our emphasis that we put on the process, and then the product is, I'm not going to say it's less important, but since we know that they can use AI and they will definitely use AI, we just need to adjust our approach to how we deal with writing in general. And maybe
Yeah, I
the
think you're
process
right.
is going to be more important.
I've got a few things. Neil, I was quite interested by the forum post. I have that problem as well. Today, though, I actually had people applying using AI for courses. They were completing the application, and it's just like, how do I deal with that? They was trying to find out your own background knowledge to do a course. And
they are now talking about AI agents completing online courses as a whole. So what's the point of online learning from
Let's
now
not go.
on?
Let's be careful. Let's not open that kind of worms just yet. And I do think to sum up a few of your points, there is questions. It's not necessarily the plagiarism that's the issue here. It's how we are doing it, because we're probably, our means of assessment are probably a little bit stuck over here where education is now here, and maybe we should not just address the problem as a plagiarism problem, but look at our assessment issue and how we're assessing with that. And as you say, I think it's interesting how many education authorities I work with which take a negative view of AI, and if they embrace the AI and actually taught the students how to use the AI and how it might be a good research tool and this, that, and the other, but AI literacy again, it becomes quite useful. So I think we as teachers, we get worried about the copy and paste aspect, the plagiarism aspect, but actually, as you all said, we are going to use it. So let's accept that we use it and bring it to the table rather than take a very draconian stop to it. A complete change, because we're flying. We've got about 15 minutes left. Just on that point, Quaret says AI is the new reality. We need to teach the ethical use of AI and inculcate this ethics of AI among learners, which I completely agree with. But I wanna change tack completely. So sorry about the 90 change around, because I'm going to change from plagiarism into equity, really. In fact that AI was like a lot of technologies that come into education, they're seen as the next big thing that's going to make the playing field fair and be open and radicalize education. But actually, is that true of AI? And Gustav, I think it says, I teach in remote areas where there's a lack of technologies. So I mean, how can AI help? So is there a sense that AI, rather than being this equitable thing, could it actually deepen a global education divide that kind of already exists in some way?
I think yes.
Having a quick crack, I think there are three areas we need to think about. First one's the obvious one, cost. Is that cost can be a barrier. We need to make sure that cost is not a barrier here. Second one is regionalization. I think we need to think about. So education content can have quite a strong slant towards certain geographies, and we need to be careful about that regionalization aspect. And the third one, I think you've just mentioned, essentially, is internet access. If we think about AI tools today, almost all AI tools rely on an internet connection, which again slants to certain regions fairly strongly. I think there are solutions to all of those problems that again we can talk about, but those are the three areas I'd look at: cost, regionalization, and access, largely meaning internet.
Thank you. I thought Joe was about to come in, so I didn't want to say it. Peter's answered the question. Done. Neil, anything to add?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I can add anything to what Peter said there, really. I mean, there are implications, obviously, for access there, but I don't know if I know the answer to them, I'm afraid.
So there's
also, like, they can always limit the access to any of the models that we use. So for example, when I do these AI related teacher training courses, I try to show, like, here's this chatbot and that chatbot, and they are capable of various things. But then when all 15 of my trainees jump on one chatbot, for example, like Claude is we mentioned that we're not mentioning anything, but like, for example, and then it says, okay, I'm going to limit your access to this particular model because of increased use and need. So, or it's just, or our reliance on these models is just so volatile, and it can just go away at any second, and it's also something to consider.
Great. A couple of thoughts of optimism there, because I agree that's a really key one. The first piece of optimism would be to look at trends, and there's a trend on the sort of forefront of the biggest and most capable models that they get bigger and more complex. But there is also a trend of simplifying those models down to smaller models with still a lot of the capabilities of the previous generations of the models, but at much smaller scale, which is reducing costs. So if we look at sort of the cost per intelligence, I don't know what my SI unit of intelligence is, but the sort of cost of intelligence, that's actually come down very dramatically over the last few years, because smaller models can do what larger models used to be able to do. And that continues to be true, and there's some techniques to do that. What that leads us to, though, is that there is a future here where models don't have to be hosted centrally, internet accessible. You could see a future where mobile phones are hosting relatively competent models. So we're not there yet, and I don't know if we'll get there, but the trend is that smaller models are becoming more and more capable, and you could see a world where edge compute, mobile phones, local machines are actually able to run these models, and that solves both the centralized kill switch on your access, but also the requirement for some kind of internet connectivity behind that.
My pause is I was looking at which question to pick next. Sorry, there's so many questions coming in. I'm just like, oh, that's an interesting. Oh, that I'm aware there's about 10 minutes left. I think I'll go again, change tact and go down that kind of personalization route, which is often attributed to education, in that the AI will help personalize, or as I saw at the technology show in the UK recently, hyper personalized learning to a certain extent. But I think that comes with a few dangers. I mean, some people have already talked about whether we can trust grades, whether we can trust this. I'm going to flip it from the other way, because as you know, my question was about whether, if we go down this personalized route, and the data that we're collecting on students will be identifying students who fail, who are failing a lot earlier, and that could have problems. But I'll put it the other way around in a better question. So are there safeguards needed when we're using AI to predict and to personalize with students? Or what might those safeguards be? Because everybody's talking about personalizing learning and using AI to personalize it. Is that a good route to go? Are there safeguards that we should put in place? Neil, do you want to tackle that first?
Yeah. Okay. I was just thinking. Yeah. No. I was just thinking back to kind of what Peter was saying, that the AI does what we program it to do. You know, so we're not really talking about safeguards in the AI. The AI is going to do what we ask it to do. So it's like, okay, we identify students who are going to fail early. Now, what do we do about that? Do we help them so that they get additional tutoring earlier and increase their chances of overcoming that kind of difficulty they're having? Or do we say, well, this student's costing us a lot of money and they're going to fail, so let's boot them out of the course early and let's not waste money on them? But something I was thinking of as well is like personalization. It kind of is going down this kind of individualized kind of learning paths. And for me, like, education and learning is really like a socially constructed thing. You know, there should be a social element to it. It should be a communal kind of thing. And I would wonder or worry about the value of just like a completely AI-driven, personalized, individualized learning paths, because they would lack something really valuable in education. You know, going back to Vygotsky and all that, socially constructed learning is very valuable, you know.
Thank you. Yeah. Joe's nodding ahead.
I just want to echo what Neil said. Exactly, that we might end up in these individualized bubbles that are perfect for us based on our preferences, and learning history. But then where's the how can we evolve, and how can we grow and share experiences and different views if we just we are locked in this one box that was generated for us. So in a way, okay, it can make learning easier, but then it also makes learning more boring.
More boring, okay.
So I'm going to leave the question of sort of the personalized learning thing. I think that's been covered really well. I think you talked about predictive algorithms. Essentially, can we predict student outcomes? Can we whatever else? And the short answer is, of course, you can. You can use data to predict all kinds of things. I think the question isn't should you be using it to predict these things. The question is, what are you doing with that information and how? So if we think about, I don't know, the credit card industry, my bank monitors everything I do in the sense of every shop I go to, everything I pay for, yada yada. They know this, right? So if I go and buy a wedding ring in another country, alarm systems go off and they say, hang on, this is not normal behavior for you. This might be an illegitimate purchase. Okay, so that's going on all the time. And the question, I'm not worried about them monitoring that. The question is, what do they do with that information? So when we think about how might this be used in a student context, you might have systems that tell you this student behavior is unusual. You might want to look at it and give that student extra care, or it's unusual in this way, and that's a predictor of this thing. I don't think that can be a bad thing necessarily if it's empowering educators to make better, more caring decisions for their students. It's just highlighting this student may be struggling here. You want to spend time with them. That's quite powerful. Where I think I'd be more nervous is in sort of the fully automated systems. Again, so this kind of human in the loop thing I think is important here. So yeah, predictive algorithms I don't think are a bad thing, but it's about giving us more information to make better decisions, to care for students that we're educating.
The algorithm could be wrong as well, though, couldn't it? I mean, it could be. The algorithm is swayed itself by what it's being fed. You know, like you said, you know, if you suddenly buy wedding rings in a different country, you will see different adverts for wedding rings in different countries. But that might be a misnomer because somebody else did it for you. So the algorithm itself, I think, there's
absolutely
a lot of
true. The algorithm can be wrong. My brother bought books from another country for a library in a third country. And getting that through, the algorithms to allow that purchase to go through was almost impossible because alarms were going off the whole time because it was obviously breaking several of those rules. So algorithms can be wrong, absolutely true. But the idea that they're informing our decision making, I don't think he would have been upset that the bank wanted to double check those purchases. And similarly, if a student has not turned up to lessons or has stopped doing homework and the quality of the homework is lower, teachers being made aware of that by an automated system and told that this may indicate certain things, I think is a tool that can be useful for that teacher to be able to care better for those students.
I don't disagree with you. I'll come in a second, Joe. I don't disagree with you, Peter, but I would say as well, it leads into the wider question for teachers of which data to read and understand. You know, I mean, I'm wearing a smart ring. I wear a smartwatch. They give me different pieces of information. Which one is actually telling me how well I'm sleeping? I don't know. And I think that can be the problem when we're using a lot of AI-driven tools in education, is they're all providing different data sets. So one of the problems with that, as I think is an analogy to the algorithm, is which data do I believe, and which one is actually showing me that student is struggling with the homework, etc., and wasn't just distracted by what was on television, for example. Joe.
Sorry, I just wanted to add one thing to what Peter has said about and that connects to plagiarism and detectors, that I've seen lots of teachers who would love to have the perfect AI detector so that they can then automate decisions and say, okay, so it's 60%, we fail this student and we pass that student. But it's exactly this, that these detectors might be used, but only for just showing you something something might perhaps be wrong. But even that, they can give you false positives, false negatives. It's up to your decision what you do with that data. And it's just impossible. Like, you cannot automate this, that we're going to automatically fail all students who reach this percentage. And even though for teachers it would be much easier, it's not how it works. And you just have to arrange some kind of an extra meeting and make your own decision.
doesn't that work? Is that how grading systems work anyway? You know, like there are certain exam bodies to which these people will pass and these people won't. AA or not AA, that's part of education. I just want to pick up on you were talking about at the beginning of this when we were talking about the personalized aspect of it. They were talking about the isolation and the social nature of that if you go personalized, it becomes very isolated. Ernesto says, but hang on, can't AI be used to generate the social component of education? It's a genuine question. By creating virtual communities where people learning similar things can find each other better. So there's always a different second side of this. We have probably got a couple of minutes left, so now is a good time to talk about ethics, isn't it? Really, 2 minutes left. We'll talk about bias.
That's really, enough for ethics.
Really give it down. People are talking. We've talked about the trust. We've talked about plagiarism. The other question, therefore, I do think we've talked about equity as well. And I think that idea of the bias of AI underpins all those things in a certain way. So finally, then, I mean, can we consider how AI might be reinforcing or breaking down the racial, gender, and any social economic biases that it has, or does it actually? Do educators need to be aware that it's actually inflating them? What should we say? There you go. 1 minute each. Off you go. I know you could talk for 60 minutes on this one, but
I would just say very quickly that I don't know the answer to that. It's a very complex issue, but one thing I think teachers can actively do to kind of combat that is make students aware of these biases, make students aware of where the data sets are coming from. I think is the case, and Peter, maybe you can tell us about this, but I think most of the data in some of these common large language models come from Reddit and come from Wikipedia. And if you look at the kind of what's the word I'm looking for? The people who make up those editors and those contributors, they tend to be, from certain age groups, certain genders, certain areas of the world, certain races. So if you are happy to amplify those voices that are probably already pretty amplified, then, by all means, go ahead and get ChatGPT to write your essay on the environment. But maybe you don't want to amplify those voices, and maybe you have something to say coming from your point of view. So maybe allowing students to have that knowledge and allowing them to know the biases inherent in using AI to do these tasks can help.
I love it. You talked about the data, and I think that's spot on. Models aren't biased. Data is biased. The data that we have is biased. Good luck to anybody defining exactly what we mean when we talk about bias and what appropriate representation is. And again, by defining, I mean really concretely in mathematical terms, saying this is what we mean, because that's the only way that you can train a model to meet that criteria. You have to have that criteria written down in concrete mathematical terms. That's incredibly hard to do. The data set, as you said, Neil, it is going to be biased because it comes from people and it's come from societies, and we are biased. Those biases won't be universal globally, and what we mean as an effective output won't be universal globally. So yes, I think my 2 words on this are sort of good luck.
We should just end there. Good luck and fade out. Joe.
I completely agree. Yeah, we are all biased, and that's I think. And we influence the data influences the model, the algorithm. So it's a reflection of our biases and our ways of thinking. We might train the data set. We just add little, I'm guessing, but like by adding feedback. But also, I just agree with Neil that we should make our students aware of this with the help of certain activities, and then discuss. So what's going on here? What do you guys think? What do I think? And how we can consolidate all that. And there might be different viewpoints, and we just treat AI's viewpoint as one of the many and not the one.
Thank you, Joe. Arturus, just a purpose of the whole discussion really says, as an ethics teacher, I say this to my students: you can use AI as long as you can fool me that it's really your work made by you, which I think is quite a nice way. We are coming into the final minute or so, so I'm going to ask people to kind of sum up or give a takeaway from this. Audience, I want you to be involved as well. So in the chat box, give me one takeaway. I mean, the discussion, a lot of you were telling me how informative this discussion has been. So could you give me one takeaway that you're taking from what Peter, Joe, and Neil have said? Joe, takeaway? point?
I like the good luck. Honestly, I cannot think of anything else.
Joe, turn your camera off
Open
and
your
go
eyes.
rest. Open your eyes. So, Joe, we're going to take Joe off camera now because she's going to come back in 5 minutes and continue in a moment and give you some practical ideas for AI. So we'll give her a camera break for 5 minutes. Peter,
Have
Neil,
fun, everyone.
any final thoughts?
Yeah, I guess there's like, I think we've talked about this before. There's like a utopian vision for AI and there's like a dystopian vision for AI. And I guess we're language teachers and we're really concerned that, you know, AI is going to do our students writing for them, and that's really impacting on what we think we do, you know. But I think kind of that and that's the dystopian vision, you know, that AI just takes over all these areas and we lose control of it. The utopian vision maybe is that AI helps us to create really meaningful, engaging classes that really motivates our students, and engaged, motivated students aren't going to use AI to do their homework. They'll do their homework themselves because they're really interested in the topic and they want to find out more about it. So there's two ways it can go. And yes, let's hope it goes that utopian way.
Let's stay with the utopia way. Now, to bring in Peter, don't bring us down at the end of the.
Well, I just completely agree with Neil's vision there of what's achievable, but this sort of let's hope it goes this way. I think, again, we as an education community, we can impact that. And in fact, we have to, because again, that vision of what does good look like, we know what good looks like, whereas, or rather, you know what good looks like. Technologists like myself don't. And therefore, it really is important that we're not passive in this discussion, that we actively shape what we want the AI tools to be doing and how.